Hello, hello, all. Thank you for joining us again on the Almost Brothers podcast. Hey, will you do us a favor? If this podcast has meant something to you and encouraged you, will you consider becoming a monthly supporter? You could do $3, $5, $8, or $10 a month. What this does is this helps financially support the podcast so that we can continue to put out content and help better serve you. So if you would, down in the show notes, you can click the link, support, and become a monthly member. We love you. New episode coming your way. What's up, Rich? Why are you like, you always just go to laughing? Like,
I'm just a happy guy, man.
Hey, I guess, man. How's it going, man?
I'm good. I'm ready for supper.
Yeah, that's always though. That's every.
I know, but it's for real this time because we're having one of my favorite meals. So.
Oh Lord, what was it? Meatballs and
Rotel.
Love
it.
I like it. Yeah, I don't know what I had. Ice cream.
That's not a meal at all.
Well, you know,
no,
it is to me.
It's not.
What do you mean ice cream's not a meal? It is 100% a meal.
Why? Because it's got dairy.
It's got all the essential nutrients that you need.
Dairy,
and it was chocolate chip ice cream.
Dairy and chocolate. That's all you need.
Yeah, I guess so.
Everything a growing boy needs.
That's right. It helps with my growth spurts.
You're gonna grow. You better watch it.
I know, right. Yeah, too much of that gonna grow in the wrong way. That's right. Yeah. Well, today we are super excited for our guest, pastor at the Sanctuary Church, Pastor Jay Haizlip in the building. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing wonderful. How you guys doing?
We are doing well on this beautiful Sunday. I say beautiful, like we've been having about like 80-degree weather, and then all of a sudden today it dipped down to 50.
Okay, well, it's beautiful here in Southern California.
Oh yeah, rub it in. Yeah, real nice. Right. Y'all peak out about 75 or what?
So the average temperature, yearly average is around, it's 70-ish. And, but today's probably been mid-high 60s.
Oh gosh, just perfect.
Yeah. Sunny.
Yeah. Right. I'm coming to visit.
Right. And ours is, it's never just like normal. It's either just raining, flooding, or if it's a beautiful day, like it's sunny, you step outside, winds like 150 miles an hour.
Give or take.
Yeah, give or take. Yeah. Blew all of Pastor Richard's hair off. Like, it's just crazy.
Yes, that's what happened.
We can never have just a normal day around here, like a normal weather day. But you know what, Keith? That's what do they say? Like, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes.
It will change.
That's what it's like around here. Yes, sir.
Southern California would be the easiest place to be a weatherman.
Right. Yeah, wake up and kind of repeat the day before. Yeah, which y'all been getting a little bit more weather this year, or a little bit more rain, right?
Yes, we have. We've gone through unusual weather. It's not normal.
Do you have you had to prepare yourself clothes wise for that? Like, wait a second, I don't have a rain jacket.
Well, it doesn't, because it hardly ever rains, right? We typically have 2 rain seasons out of the year, and it doesn't rain very much. That you have to double up and double, like buildings and stuff, flat roof buildings. You have to really inspect because of to make sure they don't leak.
Right.
Everything leaks around here. It's not like everywhere else. So
yeah, I guess that makes sense because that wouldn't be as important because it doesn't happen so much. So I guess that makes sense. Yeah,
it does.
Which we're dealing with a leaky roof too. It's frustrating for sure. But yeah, on today's episode, man, we just wanted to talk about fighting culture and counterculture and how kind of our Christian walk has become. It's always been counterculture. Even when Jesus was, walking, it's like it's always been that. But it seems like the past 5, 10, 15 years, it has taken such a deep turn to where now we're really, really counterculture. So we wanted to start just talking kind of kind of give us your backstory of just kind of your growing up, and because you've always kind of been that, even before you pastored, you were always kind of a counterculture type of guy.
Yeah, I think the best testimonies are the ones where people talk about they grew up in church, they never got into drugs, they never went into a habitual lifestyle of sin. I love those testimonies. I think those are the most powerful, beautiful stories. That wasn't mine. I wish it was. My mother was 15 when I was born. She was a hippie. And so I grew up in that culture. And I didn't live in a commune, but it was probably one step short of a commune. And first time I ever experienced drugs and alcohol, I was somewhere around the age of 5. My mom had left me with my cousins at a party, and they gave me alcohol to drink, and they were blowing pot smoke in my face, got me high. And I remember throwing up because I got wasted as a little kid. And then by the time I was 12 years old, I was smoking dope. Just, it wasn't unusual for me to get high on a daily basis at 12. And I would go to these parties with my mom, and I would see all of her friends. I would see where they would hide their weed and stuff like that, and I would steal their stash, right?
Right.
And me and my friends would sneak around and get high and smoke it. And I'd started skateboarding when I was 10, and that really lit a fire inside me. That bit me in the direction that I ultimately went in life. And I moved out here to California skateboarding, and I met one of my neighbors who turned me on to cocaine when I was 15. And by this point, I'm sponsored. All I really cared about was surfing, skating, and getting high and partying. And, school, things like that didn't really, I didn't care about those things. And when I took that first line of cocaine, I would have never have imagined that it would have bent me in the direction that it did. And I didn't become this drug addict overnight. I still climbed the ladder of success, skating, got on the cover of magazines like Thrasher, just had some of the greatest sponsors. All the guys that I used to look at in the magazines when I first started skating, all those guys became my best friends, and moved in with Tony Alva when I was 16 through the movie The Lords of Dogtown. He was one of the main guys in that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of bit my life in a direction. And then there was a point where drugs and alcohol, got more and more control over me. It wasn't that skating was bad, but a lot of the choices I was making, living that life, took me in the direction that nearly destroyed my life.
Right. Do you think that those kind of went hand in hand with each other, right? Just kind of that skate culture and then, the drug culture.
More so in that day than now. Like skating now can be like, you can have the soccer mom and the kids that skateboard, right?
Right.
And they don't so much go in that direction. But there was a big core. When I was at my peak in skating, it was when skating was at its worst in terms of, there was the economy was real bad during that time. Skateboarding had kind of gone down because all the skate parks closed. And so went to backyards. It was building ramps and skating empty pools in people's backyards. And that was how we did it, right? And so there wasn't a lot of money in it at that time. If you got a sponsor and got free boards, you were really stoked. When Thrasher first came out, if you were in the magazines, that was like the best feeling in the world, especially, getting on the cover. That's like that's like winning an Emmy or something, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it was, and but partying for sure with the people I was hanging out with was a big part of the life that I lived.
Yeah. And what was it that really that kind of took that turn into following Christ? Like, what was it that helped lean you out of that lifestyle into following Christ?
Yeah. Well, so I was living in Hollywood, and by this point, cocaine had gotten such a control on me. And because of skating, it gave me opportunities to do a lot of different things. with my life. I was in a couple of videos and stuff like that, music videos. I was playing this one main character for this band doing their video, and I went out all night. So we shot all day into the evening. We had to show back up the next morning early, like 4 or 5 in the morning, downtown LA, to finish what we were doing on that particular part of the video. And I went out all night on cocaine, right? Didn't even go to sleep, showed up, did what I was supposed to, try to do what I was supposed to do. But I was so high on coke, I couldn't effectively do what they had hired me to do, right? So I began to lose everything. And I'm living in Hollywood, and I wouldn't show up for opportunities, jobs. I did ads for a lot of stores that were in the whole Melrose district. There were some of the main stores back then were stores like Flip of Hollywood, another store called Cowboys and Poodles. And so I did a lot of ads for those type of stores. And, but I wouldn't show up. I'd choose going and partying over showing up.
Right.
And so I was so broken, so controlled. I wanted to change my life. I left I left California, went back to Alabama. And to make a long story short, I went back and forth several times, but eventually it led up to me. I got arrested in Alabama, was sentenced to 2 years in prison, spent 6 months incarcerated. And then after I got out, I thought, okay, I'm not gonna do drugs, any of those things, but I ended up going right back into it. And I couldn't change my life. I tried so hard to change my life. I worked programs. I put myself in treatment centers. I did all these things, and none of it was working for me. I had this monster that was on the inside of me that I couldn't get free from. And I got out of a treatment center, went out all weekend, came home, sat on the edge of my bed, and I'm like, I felt so hopeless. I thought, if this is all life is going to be like, this hurts.
Right.
Excuse my vernacular, but it sucked, right? I was like, I couldn't, the only option I could see as it related to how I could get out of my pain was dying. And I contemplated ending my life. And I can look back on it and see how God sovereignly intervened and didn't let me do that. And I'd cried out to God in that moment. I said, God, if you're real, why won't you help me? And God heard that prayer. And God put a man in my path who shared Jesus with me in a way I've never heard anybody talk about Jesus. It was the most non-religious way I'd ever heard. I'd never heard anybody talk about Jesus like this. He was acting like he personally knew Jesus, like Jesus was his best friend, right? And I heard myself ask this guy, well, how do I get my life to Jesus? Actually, the words came out, how do I get saved? And I didn't really know what saved meant. But that man opened up his Bible to Romans chapter 10, verses 9 and 10. And he read those two verses, about believing in your heart that God has raised Jesus from the dead, confessing him with your mouth, and you'll be saved. He read that to me. Then he led me in a prayer. And as I prayed the prayer, asking God to forgive me and to come into my heart, I literally felt all this weight, this pain, this hurt. I felt it lift off me, come out of me. And God filled me with his presence right there in that moment. And I was, not only was I saved, but God filled me with his spirit. And I never used drugs ever again.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So that's what happened. That's how I got saved.
So what age were you when this encounter happened? Because you started at 12. That's a lot of bad life in a short time.
Yeah. I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And see, that's cool. Cause same with Pastor Rich, he was later in life, and I think that, that in itself can be kind of counterculture to, you think, I either had to grow up in church or get saved young, or, you get past a certain age and it's like, well, God's kind of done with me and he doesn't want to use me. And it's like, no, you could be at it. Cause you were what, 35, 38 when he got saved. Yeah. So that's amazing to know.
Only 10% of the people that give their life to Jesus do so after 30.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I didn't either. Yeah. And it's crazy. And it's like, no, like God can do it for the young, the old. I mean, you're not too far gone, no matter, how old you are. And it's God still wants to use you. Not only, can he save you, but man, he wants to use you at that age,
Yeah.
So yes, he does.
It's awesome to see, Pastor Rich getting used, like I said, he leads our men's ministry, and it's awesome to see him be used, knowing that he got his Christian walk, a lot later in life.
Yeah.
I was kind of raised in church, my whole life, oh gosh, the old pastor saying, I had a drug problem. I was drugged to church. Like, oh gosh. But I was, I was cutting my teeth on pews, man. But
that's nice.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. A lot of even in that, which is kind of what I want to shift to is I know a lot of my upbringing in church had a lot to do with religion, so I feel like now as I stepped out and I really, as my relationship with Christ, my personal relationship with him began to grow, a lot of those religious things began to fall off of me. I began to read scripture and go, wow, that's not what I thought it said. So even in that, I kind of became counterculture to the religious people, especially around here. We're smack dab in the middle of the Bible Belt. I mean, you talk some old school Baptists and Pentecostals around here. So, when you kind of step outside of that, you almost become counterculture in church, in the church circles. Talk about a little bit of that. Have you had any experience? Because you're from Alabama. Do they still call you Alabama?
And so my skateboard friends, yes, they did.
Yeah, I knew that was like your nickname. Yeah, that's awesome.
Jay Alabama. Yep.
That's funny. Yeah. So did you experience that? Kind of that, even just that culture of religion, like you said. You met Jesus at a very unreligious meeing. Just
I was on my way to
simple.
buy drugs. Actually, I wasn't in church.
Right. Yeah. Just something like it wasn't a great message. It wasn't, a revival. It was just a true encounter with Jesus.
Yeah. It was a man who felt the tug on his heart to share Jesus with me. Right. He just had that prompting. Tell him how I changed your life. And, yes, have I seen and experienced religion in the South? Yeah, I have. And it exists here, but in a different way. I'm sure there's similar types of religion. I don't experience it, right? I live in the most unchurched portion of America, which is the West Coast, right? You ask somebody to go to church here, they ask you, well, what kind of church? And they don't mean, is it Assemblies of God or Baptist or Methodist? They mean, is it Muslim, Buddhist, or Christian, right? Or Catholic. So, or you can ask somebody to go to church and they're like, church? Why would I want to go to church?
Yeah.
And they don't mean, they're not saying it offensively. It's just it's not something that it's part of normal culture here. There is a move of God here though. But religion, think about John the Baptist. John the Baptist looked rebellious to the current religious structure of his day. He wasn't orthodox in his approach. His vernacular, his vocabulary, what he said definitely wasn't Christianese. So he spoke words that were straight to the core, right? He was dressed in, camel's hair and eating locusts and wild honey. And so that's John the Baptist, right? But he prepared the way for Jesus. Right. And religion is repulsive to unbelievers. Jesus talked about religious people standing on street corners and they got their religious garments on and their phylacteries and praying these long prayers, but they're doing it for the purpose of trying to impress people to make them think, I am religious, I am godly.
Right.
And you don't see anybody being attracted to them. Matter of fact, Jesus said you have to travel halfway around the world to win one convert. And then when you win them, you make them twice as much the son of the devil as you yourself are. He even called them devils because they were religious.
Yeah.
But when you see Jesus, everywhere he went, like just news of him coming, he's coming to town. And people would run before him and say, he's coming. And crowds would run out of the city to meet him as he was coming towards them. And so that's the difference between religion and Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I could go on and on about some of those things as it
Yeah.
relates to religion, because religion focuses a lot on performance. It focuses a lot on appearance. It focuses a lot on your behavior in certain contexts, right? Jesus said, you put these laws around people's necks that even you yourself don't keep. And so as long as we say the right things, act the right way, and hide our struggles, hide our sins, don't let people know that you're not perfect in certain contexts, then you're accepted and fit in. If you're transparent, hey, I'm struggling, or somebody's struggling, or they come in with a shady background or past, and they kneel at the altar, somebody's like, like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And so that's the difference between religion and Jesus,
Yeah. And I know, just reading the scripture, you don't really get like tone, out of it, but I could just imagine Jesus as just like this, like chill, soft spoken, cause like you said, like crowds would just draw into him. So, as the religious are screaming and yelling, I could just imagine him just very soft spoken and very just straight to the point and very approachable, and I always wonder why church people aren't like that. Like we think we've got to scream and yell and we got to get our point across. It's like, I can't imagine Jesus. Like I can only imagine like the only time him getting upset was at the religious.
Right.
It was never coming down on somebody. It was never coming down on a sinner. Just like, you're messed up. It was always against the religious, you den of vipers, always against the religious. So it's like, I believe that he was the same. He was that counterculture in that same exact way where he came and he said, I didn't come to be fed. I came to feed. I didn't come to be served. I came to serve, and it's like, man, that in itself, I think we have lost sight of in the church and as a whole.
We take the very wrong approach of thinking that we have to save people instead of leading them to the man that can.
Yeah.
So we got to scream louder than the other people about what they're doing wrong. And that's just not the way to do it.
Yeah. And
and I love the church. I don't want to come off as a church hater because I really love the church, but there is that real element. And God used church and has used church in my life. I wouldn't be who I am today without it. The man that led me to Jesus, he invited me into his friend circle. There's absolutely no way I would have made it or I would be who I am today had that man not done that. He didn't just lead me to Jesus. He invited me into community, to family.
Yeah.
He discipled me. I was able, because I didn't grow up in a religious environment. So I didn't know that you didn't ask certain questions, right? And I remember they invited me not long after I got saved to this men's kind of camp at these cabins and stuff, right? So we're all sitting around and I'm just asking these guys these questions, and you could see the shock on people's face. They're like, and I'm like, what's going on here? I'm just asking them questions.
Yeah.
My friends talk like this, but and then after the camp, a guy calls me up and says, hey, that question you asked? Here's your answer. And he wouldn't tell me in front of everybody else.
So it wrote down the answer, just like, I'll get back with you later on that. That's funny. So thinking about that, what do you think? Because again, the culture that you're at, being in California is so much different than ours. But I think just as a whole, the church has lost, I wouldn't say a foothold, but we've lost influence in so many different spheres of influence in culture, whether it be music or movies or, anything like that. What would you say would be a good way for us to infiltrate and to be able to get in these different areas of culture so that we can have our part in it, not be of the world and not be okay with what they're doing, but just to at least have a fingerprint on all these different things, because, I feel like we've kind of let that slip
we're in the
away.
world. Yeah. Well, my friend, Greg Laurie, they just came out with that movie, Jesus Revolution.
So good.
And that that movie's powerful, right?
Yes.
And that movie really encapsulates everything we just talked about.
Yeah.
And from religion to an authentic encounter with Jesus and a move of God in a person's life, like Lonnie Frisbee and all the other people that were getting saved at that time. And but I think for a long time now, we've stepped outside of the boundaries of Scripture. I think we have tried to sit at tables and receive the affirmation of the world. But hey, you're cool. And God's goal for us is never to have the world affirm us or for the world to say, hey, you're cool.
Yeah.
You can sit at my table, even though we need to have a seat at the table. But our job is to influence culture, not become a part of it.
Right.
You know, to get swallowed up in it. I live in one of the most liberal environments in America, right? This is the whatever they can make happen here and normalize here. It's only a matter of time before they will try to take it and spread it across America, you know, from the whole transgender, all the way from the indoctrination in schools, a school that's about a mile from our church. There's a high school teacher, right? She took down the American flag. She put up the pride flag.
Yeah.
And she made a TikTok video that went viral. You probably saw it, but she talked about how her students during Pledge of Allegiance would say, hey, what do we pledge allegiance to? And she pointed out she took down the American flag. And then she says in her TikTok video, pledge to that flag.
Yeah, I did
right?
see that. Yep.
So that was about a mile from our church. And there was a huge backlash that there were, I don't know how many people, or how many flags, but they went and literally put American flags up all over that school campus, just people from within the community, right? Yeah. And so that was the pushback against that type of stuff. But that is being normalized here.
Yeah.
You know, they just passed a law in Washington State that if a child wants to transition, that and the parent try to stop it or intervene, that they can actually legally take your child from you.
Yeah.
And help that child transition. So, for example, you know, a kid's in school and somehow someone in the school, a counselor, helps a student decide, oh, you're a different pronoun, different gender. Let's come up with a different identity, different name. And then they begin you on a pathway that will involve, you know, medication, things like that, hormone blockers, and things like that. And the parent discover it because they'll hide that stuff now from parents. Parent discover it, try to intervene, stop it. They can take your kid away.
Yeah. So
that's where we are in our world today. And, you know, I just saw a video last week of this situation in San Francisco where a lady was out of her mind, cracked out of her mind, doing crack all day long. And she was pregnant and she gave birth to a baby right there on the sidewalk. And just two people walking by stopped and helped and intervened and called for help, people to come. But literally the baby was born without any medical assistance. The lady was out of her mind. And it just broke my heart that that's where we are. That's the culture. You go to downtown LA or in a lot of places here in Southern California, just the level of homelessness and drug abuse and the amount of suicide has just skyrocketed over the last 3 years. People dying on fentanyl and just going crazy on crystal meth, things like that. It's just saturating our culture.
Yeah. And
that's just some of what's going on in this world that we live in right here. And so we have to stand stronger than ever before. You know, it's not about trying to win a popularity contest, but it's about truly, like you said, allowing God to use us for his glory to put his fingerprint on a situation so he can change the outcome of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, we've cowered back from even those discussions, because like you say, you see the pushback when push comes to shove, you'll see people, stepping out and saying, no, this is enough. But it's like, why does it take for it to get to that extreme for us to stand up and say, yo, hey, like it's too much. I feel like we've cowered back so much, especially as believers, where we say, oh, well, they're not bothering us and we don't need to be. And, even in schools, like, man, how many teachers has this been a problem with in the past couple of years of all this, like you said, pushing all this ideology on kids, on young 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, because we've taken our influence out of that and said, oh, well, it doesn't pertain to me. I'm not even going to worry about it.
Right.
Until all of a sudden we go, holy crap, like this is way worse than what I thought. And now we have to stand up and now we have to say something.
Well, I think that's part of it is we don't realize how bad it is getting until it gets there. And it's like, whoa,
right.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Until it directly personally affects you.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think COVID really opened the eyes to that, especially school wise, because parents are starting to look at some of these things their kids are learning. And it's like, wait a second, this isn't good.
Well, it's even the difference between like us here and you on the West Coast. You talk about things that are abstract to us, right? Because we're not experiencing that. It's a different battlefield for us here than it is there. So it's hard for us to wrap our minds around what you're dealing with, even beyond what we deal with here.
Yeah.
So it's like totally foreign.
Yeah. And it takes a while, it almost takes, it takes a while to get from West Coast to these more, smaller rural areas. Cause I know that's what 2 years ago, is really when it started hitting schools, and, you'd read about it and you watch it on the news, and you're like, oh, that'll never happen around here. Like these are small towns, and then just slowly you start seeing this stuff happening. You're like, okay, wait a second. Like we really need to reevaluate some things here, and we need to stand up and start putting our influence back in schools and back in, the teacher programs. And we need to start stepping up and come out of our little, we put blinders on and, I'm going to deal with me and mine, and that's it. And we kind of let everything kind of go by the wayside.
And I think this kind of goes back to your question, right? That you had asked me. It's important that we engage culture from a biblical perspective.
Yeah.
That we're here for a purpose and an assignment. The original mandate that God gave man in Genesis, subdue the earth, have dominion. That wasn't for us to be dictators, but that was for us to be people that engaged culture. Our job is to engage culture. So I think, number one, we need people on school boards. We need people in administrative positions. We need people that are teachers in the school systems. And we need those in every sphere of influence within a community.
Yeah.
That we're not just religious people in those contexts, but we're people that understand that we're here on divine assignment. God didn't just save us to leave us. He saved us here because he has a purpose.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, absolutely.
Social media is so important in that aspect of getting the word out, because it's an unbelievably far-reaching thing, and it can be used for good or evil. There has to be more good.
Right.
We have to do that. We have to do our part to flood social media with something that our youth and everybody needs to see right now.
Right. And that's I think that's what's good about these alternative, now you're getting a lot of these alternative media places, whether it's websites or, what's the one that's like you do, Rumble, you start getting these alternative places to be able to go and to be able to share, because, they start shutting down certain viewpoints and opinions. And it's really good to see that start happening, that counterculture. It's like, okay, you know what? We're going to step our toes in this, and we're going to start, stepping up and saying, we're going to make something, or, so that's awesome to see as well. So on another note, I want to switch gears here real quick.
Okay.
So how often do you skateboard now?
Just posting a picture on a social media account.
Just kind of like the people that just go to the gym and like take a picture with them and go home. That's funny.
Yeah. So if that was the case, it would have been last week. But it comes in different. It just depends on what's going on in my life. But sometimes I may go a few weeks where I don't skate. Sometimes it just may be I just skate across a parking lot, and then sometimes I go to the skate park, and I'm always. I got a skateboard in my car, so I always have one with me.
Yeah.
So I'm never without a skateboard, just like I'm never without a Bible. Right.
Yeah, and they go hand in hand right there, baby.
Yeah. So to some degree, I'm always skating.
Yeah.
But just not always like at the park going for it, shredding.
Yeah. Now we're starting to get around here. We're starting to get a lot more like skate parks. Like we never had that when I was growing up. And now I know there's one about 40 minutes away. There's one in Poplar Bluff.
Yeah.
And it's pretty nice. I mean, it's a full-fledged. I'm just like, I drove by. I'm just like, man, 20 years ago, I'd so be out there. Now it's like, I'll break a hip. I don't want to do that.
I guarantee it. Yeah, I can't do anything without breaking something.
I want to get you on a board one of these days.
You ain't getting me on no board. Stop it.
He'd have to have.
I love where skateboarding has come to, right? I got arrested for skateboarding on the sidewalk one time, and now they're building skate parks, so it's beautiful.
Right? Yeah, I seen some cop that like he just keeps boards in his patrol car, and like he'll drive by and see a skater, be like, all right, do a kick flip, and he'll do a kick, and he'll give him a new board. I'm like, that is so cool, nice. Man. Like a cop, yeah. I'm like, that is awesome. I
do have another question for you. Did you stay in contact with the individual that gave you the original encounter? Is that somebody that you kept in contact with?
Yeah, no, I sure have. He calls me as Timothy, right? And he discipled me. He's on the board of our church.
That's awesome.
Wow.
He was a mayor. He was a mayor of a town in Alabama. He is an entrepreneur. Owned a couple of different. He owned a furniture company. Owned couple of Christian bookstores, and so he was a businessman. And he's retired now, and because he's older in life. But I still talk to the guy on a regular basis.
That is so cool.
He is stuck with me for the rest of his life.
right. Whether he likes it or not, that's so funny.
Oh yeah. No, when I got saved, he did not realize what he was getting himself into. I was out of maintenance. That's in the early days.
Just calling him at all time. What do I do about this? That's funny. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, talking about kind of getting our, getting our fingerprints in culture. I know you did Preachers of LA. Like how did that all go about? And like, I know you had to meet like just some amazing people, just even being able to get in these rooms that maybe you never thought you'd ever be in. Then all of a sudden you're just like, wow.
Yeah, I knew God opened up that door, and I knew God wanted me to go through it. And there was a lot of pushback in the beginning, right? When the advertisements, the trailers, and ads first started coming out, there was a lot of hate, and I just like, okay, I'm going to put my head down and do it, because I know once people really begin to see who I'm about in terms of my relationship with Jesus, hopefully their perspective will change. And so it did put me in places that I would have never thought. Our TV show was the number one show on Oxygen. It had millions of people that would watch it. And so the amount of people, there are people in our church still to this day that are in our church because of that show.
Wow.
When people come to Southern California, they'll come like, oh, we want to go on vacation. We want to go we're going to go to the ocean. We're going to go to Disneyland. We're going to go see Hollywood stars. And on Sunday, we're going to go to that guy's church. So I meet people all the time that come because of that show.
That's awesome.
But it put me in rooms and spaces, met people that I wouldn't have been able to meet otherwise. Like one time, they flew me out to New York City, and I met with all these executives from NBC, Oxygen, and Bravo. So there's all these executives in this room, and all they wanted to do was talk to me about Jesus and ask me questions.
Wow.
And so I got to minister right to those types of people. There are people in the entertainment world that still to this day, movie producers, well-known actors and actresses that are connected to me, connected to our church simply because of that show.
Wow.
People that have major platforms, right, that weren't serving God, or maybe they had given their life to Jesus, but they weren't walking it out. That show, God used it, gave me a voice into those people's lives, those situations that helped them to get to where they need to be with Jesus.
Right.
That's
And
so cool.
and that's what I love. You know, I told you this when we talked the other day. You know, I've been such a big fan of yours for a long time. And it's because of things like that where not only did you do something like that, but you maintained your integrity and your faith in Christ. So you didn't water it down and dumb it down and kind of bottle it up to where it's like, okay, you know, I don't want to be too crazy here. I don't want to really, you know, really minister to anybody, and just kind of, like you said, just kind of try to be cool, and I don't want to offend anybody. I love how you've stayed strong to your guns. Just like, you know what, this is who I am. This is my relationship with Christ. Take it or leave it, love it or hate it. Here it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so awesome, not seeing you back down to that, you know?
Yeah. So did this go down? Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Okay. Think these died. So I hope it still sounds okay. If
Yes,
the mic
sir.
changed. You know, were there moments where people tried to take me down a narrative or pathway that wasn't true to who I was? There are many of those times where scenarios were intentionally created to try to see if they could get something else out of me, right? But I refused to allow that. I mean, I was in those scenarios, but I had to dig deep, right? So I think in those moments, I showed other people that you can be in environments that are not conducive to, you know, what we would call like a Christian bubble, right?
Yeah.
You can be in these toxic environments and stand strong for Jesus. And you don't have to be a weirdo. You don't have to be a hater. You can genuinely express love and grace without compromise, and it can influence and affect an environment.
That's good. Yeah. I just had a thought, you can be countercultural without creating chaos.
Sure.
You know, you could stand up for what you believe in a way where people can respect it, whether they disagree with you at all. I think, you know, most of us we realize that we're going to disagree on things,
right?
You know, so if you just come and you're real and you're authentic and you're not trying to, you know, bash anybody with how you feel, but still standing strong with who you are, I think a lot of people will meet you right there and say, you know what, I completely disagree with you, but I respect that, you know? So,
right.
you know, just being able to say, you know what, I'm not going to back down on who I am, but I'm also not going to bash you for who you are either.
Yeah. I was invited to this birthday party in West Hollywood because of the show, my wife and I. And when we got there, the vast majority of the people, and all of them had some type of platform in the entertainment world. But the vast majority of them were very much unbelievers, right? And I'm like, wow, this is a wild environment we're in right now. And there were people that would try to provoke me with little statements and stuff. But I just lovingly stayed who I am. And over the course of the evening, a lot of the people in that room worked their way around to trying to sit beside me and engage in authentic conversation, because they would try to make little jabbing statements from preconceived ideas or as a defense mechanism. But then when they saw that it didn't rile me and provoke me to some religious backlash type statement, that I stayed in love and just didn't get offended by people, they opened up, they softened, their hearts opened, they engaged in real conversation and allowed their real interest to come out.
Yeah. And I know, Pastor Rich, you've talked about that. You know, he kind of deals with that at his, you know, like he'll go to a family reunion or something and he got people out just kind of saying little statements.
Just try to needle you.
Yep.
Yeah. And they do. They expect a certain reaction.
Yep.
Because of the old me. Yep. Because of who I used to be. They think that they can poke the bear.
Literally.
and they'll get that reaction that they used to get, and it's just not the case anymore. And it's very surprising. And I've had conversations with people from my past because of that, because they thought they were going to get a reaction that they didn't get. So it is something that opens doors to those authentic conversations. That's why I like the word you use for that, authentic conversations, because that's something we've got to start having.
Yeah.
Is real talk with people instead of trying to pretty everything up, instead of, because me and Mike talk all the time about, everybody has a past. Everybody's been through stuff. Stop hiding from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Stop ignoring it.
Yep.
So, so we just passed Resurrection Sunday, right? Just recently. And I was talking about the empty tomb, and the empty tomb there, one of the gospel writers talked about there was an angel, two angels inside the tomb. One would have been where the head of Jesus was. One would have been at the feet of where Jesus was. That's a picture of the Holy of Holies, the two angels, the mercy seat, all that. When we share our testimony, when we have authentic, genuine conversations, we're bringing the Holy of Holies into that moment. We're testifying to the resurrection. It's the mercy seat coming into our conversation. Then literally God begins to touch people's hearts when we have open, honest conversations around Jesus. And
And I think that's the answer right there. How do we get in culture? That's it. Just have real conversations. Just especially with those on the other side, those that completely disagree or don't believe with what we think. Right. Hey, look, let's meet. Let's have a real authentic conversation, because I think we can both get something out of it. I think we can both understand where each other's coming from. And it just opens up an opportunity for people to look at you and go, there is something different about you.
Yeah.
There is something different about you that I don't have. I want that.
Right.
Just being
so
able to
you're making me think about the conversation Jesus had with the woman at the well, right?
Yeah.
So he goes out of his way because he knows she's coming. And he obviously knew everything about her. He knew she was going to be there. That's why he went there.
Yeah.
And so when she gets there, he asked her for a drink. Now, we know Jesus didn't eat anything that she could have given him. But he asked her for a drink, and he uses it to start a conversation. And through the course of that conversation, then he says something like, well, if you knew who it was that was talking to you, you'd really ask him for a drink, and he'd give you something to drink, and you'd never thirst again, right? And she's like, wow, where can I get this?
Yeah.
But he ends up, then he switches. He doesn't condemn her, but he switches it. When he says, go call your husband. She said, well, I have no husband. He says, you're right. You've had a bunch of them, and the guy you're living with, you're not married to. And of course, she's like blown away at this, right? But as a result of that conversation, him engaging her, him ministering to her, almost in a indiscreet way, right? It wasn't the overt, I'm ministering to you.
Yeah.
But he was really ministering to her without her knowing it. And it so led her to the point of realizing that, wow, this guy knows everything about me. She runs back to the city, and she becomes the catalyst for all Samaria at that moment getting saved.
Yeah.
Because it said all Samaria came out because of the testimony of the woman.
Yeah.
And once they saw for themselves, they believed.
Yeah.
And of course, Samaria was, being a Samaritan back in that day was, it was a lesser than category of people in society, right? Because it's different than today. Because back in that day, you didn't intermix. And Samaritans were biracial.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Less than. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always put it, how do I put it? That, she started the conversation talking to a man at a well. She ended the conversation talking to a well, looking at a hole in the ground. And she didn't know it the whole time. She's like, whoa, wait a second. Oh, okay. So everything just in that midst of that conversation, everything flipped. She started even seeing herself differently because he saw her differently. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
I'm not who I even said I was, like that's just so good because that's just who he is. That's who Jesus is, man. Just meeting you.
But so there's those moments, right? And oftentimes when you live in the world like we live right now, it can seem so overwhelming. And I don't believe that life is ever going to go backwards to anything that it once was.
Yeah.
I personally believe we're living in the end times. And so I think we're living in the labor pains. So there are going to be these moments of can catch my air, but there's going to be another labor pain that comes. COVID was one. That was the beginning of the labor pains. And so I don't think it's ever going to go backwards. I don't think we'll ever see this nation as a whole like it was, at some time in the past. I think there's always going to be some type of turbulence because it's going to set up the stage for the Antichrist. Can't be perfect because if it's perfect, there would be no platform for him.
Right.
But in the midst of it, there's a move of God. In the midst of it, there's revival that's breaking out, and people's lives are being touched and changed. It's just in a different way than it's ever been in the past. And so it's this woman at the well. It's one person. We think, oh, I can't make a difference. How can I make a difference with all of this, this global agenda that's going on, this attack that our world is experiencing, Ukraine-Russia war, what's happening with China, just the transgender movement all across America. I mean, it could seem so overwhelming. What could one person do? It would seem impossible. But here, this girl is the least qualified.
Yeah.
She has such a radical encounter with Jesus. She's the spark, the catalyst that saves Samaria. The first Great Awakening, it started because this girl that had a reputation of sleeping with everybody. Somebody died, and as a result of that death, eternity was on her mind. She goes to church that following Sunday. She hears a message about justification through faith. She gives her life to Jesus, and she's the catalyst to the first Great Awakening in America.
Yeah.
Lonnie Frisbee, the catalyst to the Jesus movement. He's out in the desert doing hallucinogenic drugs, has an encounter with Jesus, and it becomes this spark, right?
Yeah.
And so we can see these sparks that shift and change. I do think there's hot spots. I think there's churches. I think there's communities. I think there's areas that are like these spiritual hubs. And it's like where Elijah took Elisha to Bethel, right? Where Jacob laid his head on the rock. And he said that's where the angels were ascending and descending. And he said, this place is awesome. It's none other than the house of God, right? So I think there are these churches. I think there are communities and areas where God will and desires to open up that are like these hubs of his presence, and people's lives are being changed. And from that, we engage the people, and that's what I want our church to be, right?
Yeah.
I want right here in Southern California, I want our church to be this oasis, right? Where people come in. It doesn't matter where they've been or what they've been like. Like today, for example, this one man, all the people came forward to give their life to Jesus. And my wife is standing over off the side, and this guy, I'm leading people to Jesus. I'm praying with people. And then we try to really connect with them. I don't want to just lead people to Jesus and say, hallelujah,
right.
hope, see you later, come back. We really try to invite them, show them how they can become part of the family, and we'll help them become a disciple. And so he has this little baby. A man by himself has this little baby. And so he's going to go back because the baby starts crying. My wife, he didn't know she was my wife. It's his first time at church. She said, hey, I'll hold your baby for you if you want me to. She said, I'm the pastor's wife. He said, oh, okay. And so she held the man's baby. He goes where we take people and then give them ways to be able to connect with us so we can help them. He comes back, and here this single parent dad is. His baby was premature, right? That's in our church. So stuff like that. You have people that were in our church that were prostitutes, gang members. We have well-known people. You can see rock stars at time in our church, or famous or well-known pro skaters, or different people like that at different points. But just this wide range of people. And so that's, we don't water it down. We don't compromise. People need Jesus. They need Jesus more than ever.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
so I got off on a tangent there.
No, you're good, man. Well, and because that's what heaven is going to look like, just people from different backgrounds and that have struggled with different things. And that's what we, when me and my wife kind of felt that call to plant our church, and our group of leaders all got together. That's what we want. We wanted a place because, I mean, man, there's so many cookie cutter churches that, all right, wear your suit, don't say too much, act like you got it all together, you're good to go, and it's like, we want to reach those people that are that come in and go, I don't even know about any of this. I don't know what's happening, but I need a change. I need something different. I want to know about this man named Jesus. He's the only thing I haven't tried. I need to try it.
Yeah.
And they don't feel at home in any other places. And we wanted to create a place, a hub, like you said, for people to be able to come in and say, man, I instantly feel at home.
Right.
As soon as I walk in, I've met somebody. I feel connected. I feel like I'm a part of this, and I haven't even sat down yet.
Yeah.
Because I believe that's missing so much is people are just looking for something real, and they get to a door like and they get in there and they feel like, oh, well, this is just another one of those places. Like, and it's just like,
it takes people opening themselves up to be that. It doesn't just automatically happen because it's against human nature to be that way. So we have to be more like Jesus in order to make that accomplishment.
Yeah.
But it's definitely needed.
Yeah. That relationship, like you said, the woman at the well, he started a relationship first. I'm going to meet you where you're at. I'm going to show an interest in you and what you've got going on. Hey, we got a service. Come to our service. It's like, no, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Meeting people where they're at, man. Like, hey, I know you're struggling, man. What do you need? What can I help you with? And go from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, you're doing wrong. You need Jesus. Like, oh, bro, like, calm down. I don't even know you, man. But man.
Yeah. Need is a great point of entry to show the love of Jesus.
Yeah. Yep. And it's especially around here, like it's really needed. There's a lot of poverty around here. A lot of people, living under that poverty level of just trying to get by, man, and feeling no hope and no purpose. And it's like amazing to just get to show them the love of Jesus and say, you know what? You're struggling. Life is tough. Life sucks sometimes, but man, we're all struggling. Like we're here to get through this together. Let's walk through life together. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. You get into other people's world and don't come off like I'm a better than, and I'm doing something to make me feel better about my blessed life. Right. When you really get into other people's world, other person's world, and you begin to meet the need or minister to it without making them feel condemned or ashamed, and positioning yourself to where they perceive you as a friend.
Yeah.
That's where you'll begin to really make inroads in those moments.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, Pastor Jay, what else do you have on your heart, man?
Man, I just love what you're doing. I love what you're about. I appreciate you. I love guys that are out here really trying to make a difference for Jesus and, planting a church and reaching the community. this world needs it more than ever.
Man, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. I love your podcast. I know that, it'll encourage listeners, regardless of whether they're leaders or Christians, believers. I think what you're doing is it's blessing and helping people.
Thank you so much,
Appreciate
man.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Pastor Rich, what you got? Anything on your heart? If you say, I was waiting on you to say meatballs and rotel, like I was just waiting on it.
I was going to say, y'all are awesome. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, Pastor Jay, man, it's been an honor, man. And we're definitely going to try to have you on again for sure, man.
Okay.
I appreciate it, man. We love you.
I enjoyed it. Love you guys.
Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. If you don't have a home church, come see us at Remnant in Malden, Missouri. Service times are 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Sunday. And do us a favor, man, and go to your podcast platform. Give us a like, subscribe, and rate us, please. And share. God bless each and every one of you. Later.